Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another classic Archi Rhino tutorial. So today we're going to take a look at taking this Rhino model into this beautiful rendered Plexi model, all the way from scratch. And what's really great about this rendering is that you can literally put this anywhere and it'll look good, ranging from somewhere in your portfolio cover, and even on your Instagram. Speaking of which, if you end up posting this on Instagram, make sure to tag us for a chance to be featured on our account. With that being said, let's dive right into how we can create this using Rhino and V-Ray. Alright, so here's a clean slate, brand new Rhino project. We're going to set the unit to meters so that it's slightly easier to work with a bigger project. Okay, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and create our building footprint. And of course, you can use your own model to do this. Alright, so this is going to be a 10 by 30 building, just like that. And I'm just going to go ahead, purge all the layers. And make this base layer brown. Okay, that looks pretty good. And you know, when you're creating a rendering like this one, whether that be a diagram or rendering, it might be really handy to have a set of 3D furnitures, just like these ones. And we've recently released these models on our website. And if you're interested in using them in your own projects, make sure to check out the link in the description to download them. When we created these models, we had architects in mind so that the furnitures are minimal, so that they don't distract away from the actual architectural design. At the same time, as you can see, they maintain just the right amount of detail to indicate their function, without bogging down the performance or working as distractions. They're also built as Rhino NURBs, which means that you can snap, edit, and manipulate them however you'd like. Unlike extremely detailed mesh models, these are extremely fast to spin around and place. And of course, they look great in any kind of view settings, whether that be clay rendering, Arctic mode, and even pen view. So go ahead, try tossing them around in your scene and make your project come to life. And these also come in these nice room arrangements so that you can quickly deploy them into your scene. And just like this, we're gonna go ahead and select this office setup right here. Why don't we grab this nice, these two chairs right there. And then just get started with it. We're gonna copy and head over to our base project. We'll paste them in. Let's bring them over to where our project is. Alright, I'm gonna quickly go over to the plan view and start placing them. Let's make these guys white so that we can see them better in a black background. Alright, I've quickly went ahead and populated our model. So sometimes when you're working with a large project, heavy furnitures can really slow you down. With our furniture pack, you'll see that your performance is extremely fast because they're detailed just the right amount to communicate the point. So now let's go ahead and take these guys to the next level, literally. I'm gonna go ahead and take the furnitures and move it up by 5 meters. Let's give it a tall ceiling because this is a nice office. And of course, and we'll create a nice floor plate. Make sure this is a solid board, and then bring it up 5 meters as well. Okay, it's lining up perfectly. Now I'm gonna put them into the right layer. I'll take this floorboard and take it into the ground level floor. Set it as that. And then these furnitures now belong to the fern in the F2. Okay, and from the preview, you might have noticed that there's an escalator, so I'm gonna quickly create that as well. And for that, I'm gonna go to the side view. Okay. And I'm just gonna guesstimate the dimensions. Of course, when you're creating a real project, make sure to take the recommended dimensions. But for now, I'm gonna use 1.1 meter as our railing height. And when you're creating a circle, you can actually choose 2-point option right here. And then make them fill the space just like that. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna take all the curves and join it. What's really cool about escalator is that it's symmetrical. So I'm gonna go ahead, rotate it, and place it right there. Okay, actually, I only need the end part, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. Move this over. All right, that looks pretty good. Go ahead, select everything on this layer, maybe except this one, and join. Now make sure this is a closed curve. You can see it from both up there and down here. And actually, escalators have a little bit of depth when they're going up, so I'm gonna add a little bit more height here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead, join this whole thing. Now, let's come to perspective view and extrude it. Now, this is gonna comprise one railing. Maybe that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna move this over by negative 1.5 meter. Seems like a generous amount for an escalator. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm actually gonna turn this all the way around because this is how it's meant to be. And of course, we gotta make sure there's a hole so that people can actually pass through. Let's create a box. And then Boolean difference it so that we can create some sort of passage. Okay, that looks almost good, but there's a bit of an intersection here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this box a little bit bigger. Yeah, that should be sufficient. All right, that looks good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move this over just a little bit and fill this place in. So I'm gonna control click one of the edge. So this allows you to select a part of the geometry, it's just the edge. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing right over here. And now we have two edges selected. Now we can type in commands that you would normally use on curves. So for example, loft works just fine. And there we go. Now we have a plane that stretches between these two edges. I'm not going to be adding edges because we're not going to be seeing this up close. And I think that's pretty good for now. Now with that being said, maybe I'll go ahead and change this to ground level furniture. Okay, that looks good. Let me just make sure that this is on the second floor. Okay. Perfect. Now I'm just going to spend a little bit more time populating the ground floor and I'll be right back. Okay, that looks pretty good for the time being. You can spend as much or little time populating the scene, so make sure to do that with your own project. So for now, let's move on to creating some envelope. Let me go ahead and create a new layer and call this envelope. And on this layer, I'm gonna go ahead, go to the side view and start drawing our profile. So as you may have seen from the thumbnail, we're gonna be creating some sort of sawtooth roof. So let's get started with that. I'm gonna give it a glass-like, because this is gonna be Plexi, I'm just gonna give it a blue color to kind of give it a sense of glass. And I'm gonna make it a little bit wider than the building so that the floor plate doesn't touch it. Okay, with that being said, let me go ahead and create some sawtooth. I think that looks like a pretty good angle. Probably a little too deep, so I'm gonna scale 1D and reduce it a little bit. Okay, let me array it. I'm gonna create a lot in the beginning so that we can always delete some at the end. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I can go ahead and delete this line at top and then trim or fillet these two curves together. Oops, of course. Make sure your radius is 0 so that the lines end up in a sharp corner. And when all this is ready, I'm gonna select all of them and hit join. Now it's one continuous curve. Now what we're gonna be doing is gonna be interesting. We're gonna extrude this into a small extrusion without any enclosure, of course. And now we're gonna take the same curve and close it. Close curve. Now I created one line here to make this into a closed curve. Now we can use the command planar surface to enclose it. And again, there's some sort of overlapping happening, so I'm gonna go ahead and scale this up just a little bit. And let me mirror this over so that the other side is enclosed as well. All right, everything is nice and enclosed. So now this is going to be a fun part. I'm going to explode this sawtooth roof, and with all the glass members selected, I'm going to extrude this. Extrude surface is the command. And when you do this, oh no, not extrude. Yeah, we'll use a command called offset surface, and we'll use a distance of 20 centimeters. So which is 0.2 in our scale. And I'll do that. And make sure that your corner is sharp. Solid is checked as yes. And then I think that's about it. Just make sure to follow all these settings. Once it's ready, hit enter. And now Rhino will go ahead and add thickness to every single plane. So you can see, now these are nice and thick. And as you can see, there's some overlapping happening. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over by the same dimension. So negative 0.2 in that direction. And for this, positive 0.2. Now there's no overlap, but these guys are floating now. So what I'm going to do is select all the sawtooth members. Oops. And then bring it down just a little bit so that there's a nice overlap. Okay, and of course, the beauty of physical model is the imperfection. So we're going to leave all these corners just like that. And it should be fine. Now we are safe to move on to materialization. Let's go ahead and open up a V-Ray options and follow these. And here are the settings that we'll be using. First off, let's create a generic material and call it floor. And floor is just going to be a gray surface, but it's going to be a little bit brighter because our ground is going to be even darker. So that is why the second one is going to be called ground. Okay, there we go. And let's make it a little bit darker. That's good. Okay, and last but not least, and we're actually almost there. We're only making 3 materials. So let's create a color for our Plexi. Let me rename this Plexi. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to turn the color way up, which is kind of unusual for glass. And we'll take the reflection color and bring this all the way up as well. Now for our reflection IOR, I'm going to set this to 5. And then let's go over to our refraction and turn the reflection color all the way up, just like that. And then I'm going to turn the IOR to like something really small, like 1.01, so that there's minimum amount of refraction happening. And you know what? This looks pretty good to go. So I'm going to start applying this to our envelope layer. Let me right click, select all objects. It's a little bit out of the screen, but it's down there. And then right click on our material and apply to selection. So we'll go ahead and select all of our glass. Actually, I'll right click on our envelope layer and select everything. And from the V-Ray, we'll right click the material and apply it to our Plexi. Now, once that is done, let's go ahead and add our floor texture to our floor element. Apply to selection. And last but not least, we should create a plane that is going to represent the ground. Make this all the way that. Let's put in the ground floor. Yep. And then apply our ground texture. Okay, I think that should be it. Let me quickly preview this on our rendered mode. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. And oh, actually, with this one more thing, we have to create a light source. So I'm going to go ahead and create a line that's going to represent a rectangular light from V-Ray. Okay. Now let me pick this up, put it in our default layer for now. I don't know where to put it. I'll lock everything else and let's place it. I'm going to turn this up 90 degrees. Our light's pointing that way. We're going to make it point about 45 degrees from our model, just like that. And actually, let's make this a little bit narrower and bring this up just a bit. Okay, let's see what where this takes us to. You know, a part of it is all about experimentation. We can't get it perfect on the first go. Okay, I think we should make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to scale this up and lock it so that we don't accidentally move it around. And you know what? The camera could be a little bit better. I like long focal lengths, but you can feel free to experiment with different lens length as well. since this is kind of good, I'm gonna go ahead and save this to our named view. Let's save this as perspective, and let's see what happens. And this is the most exciting part, honestly. You don't exactly know what's gonna happen, so it's the moment of truth. Zoom in just a little bit. Oh, it's interesting that our light happened to land just exactly where this plane is kind of like looking at. So that's an interesting moment that I did not expect. But overall, we're actually quite close. Maybe not exactly where we want to be, but it's a good place to start, I think. So now what I'd like to do is start up a real-time rendering, or also known as interactive rendering, so that we can dynamically adjust our lighting setup. So this is something I like to do when we are playing around with lighting and camera settings. But let me first start up with lighting. So I kind of want this lighting to have a really harsh shadow. So let me try bringing this a bit closer. Okay, that looks pretty good. And make this a little bit bigger maybe. Not sure if this will help. Okay, I think it's a little bit too close to the ground, so I'm gonna lift this up so that this hotspot isn't too hot. And then I turn up the intensity, even though it looks pretty well exposed. Okay, actually I'm kind of liking this extreme spotlight effect. So what we have to do is compensate it using our camera setting. Let me go over to our V-Ray setting, and then go over to camera and start playing around with our EV value. I think something like 11 might do pretty good. Still a little bit too hot. Oh, actually, yeah, just a little bit too much. So I'll turn this back down to 11.5, and I think that should give us a pretty good place to start. And maybe we don't want this reflection, so let's try to be careful and remove it as much as possible. So I wonder where that's coming from. Is this light a little bit too tall? Nope, that was not the problem. Maybe it's the angle? Nope. Placement. Now, okay, there we go. I think I want to place it just a little bit so that we see this little bit of a edge right here, but no more than that. That's pretty nice. Okay, now that our scene's gotten a little too dark, so I'm gonna bring our EV value up just a little bit again to say 11. And that looks pretty good. I think we are almost there. I think the final step is to set up our rendering so that we can pump out a production quality image. And to do that, I'm gonna turn off our interactive rendering. Keep our quality at medium. I think this is okay for now. You know, unless you're doing a professional rendering, I think in most cases, medium quality works out quite well. But keep in mind, having a nice resolution will help you out down the road. So I'm gonna keep it at 1920 by 1080. But of course, if you want to print something at 300 dpi at a full bleed, make sure to make this at an appropriate pixel dimension. Okay, with that being said, I'm gonna also go ahead and add denoiser and keep all the settings as it is. Let's keep it at V-Ray this time around. Okay. Now double checking. Okay, checking. I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure this is not progressive. And I think that should be good to go. And now one more thing I'm gonna do. I'm actually just gonna zoom out just a little bit. I think it was a little bit too zoomed in. Actually, having it zoomed in is nice to just like play around with the image. But for the final image, it might be nice to have some sort of negative space to place your text or whatever. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and save this view as well. Let's call this final view, final 2. Okay, I'm gonna make sure to use a full rendering, not the interactive one, and I'll see you guys on the other side. And there we go. My goodness, that already looks so beautiful. All these clay model rendering, extremely, it's like furnitures with the right amount of detail that didn't bog down your system. And yeah, there we go. You know what? It's almost perfect, but you know what's gonna make it better? Color correction. So let me go ahead and save this file and go over to Photoshop. Alright, here we are in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and create an adjustment layer. And I'm gonna add some curve. So right now, as you can see, the dark area is a little bit gray. So I'm gonna pull in that dark space just a little bit. So you can see our contrast is getting stronger. And our light spot is actually quite light. As you can see, like these furnitures are almost full white. But I like to make it a little bit brighter, I think. Yeah, that's cool. And let's make the dark space just a little bit darker so it's a bit more dramatic. And I think it gets a little bit too dark on the ground floor, so I'm gonna actually take the mask and start brushing in it just a little bit. And when I say just a little bit, maybe like 20% brush. Okay, you know what? Looks pretty good. I might have overbrushed over here, so I'm gonna, oops, make up for that. Okay, there we go. And there we have it. This kind of rendering looks so good everywhere you put it. You know, you can put it in your portfolio cover page. So make sure to try this with your own project and check out the furniture pack, linked in the description. If you guys found this video helpful in any way, please consider liking or subscribing to our channel. This really helps out the YouTube algorithm and lets more people find out about our channel. If you're interested in learning more about architecture, make sure to follow us on Instagram, as well as subscribe to our newsletter and blog, where we share a steady stream of extremely useful life hacks for architects and students. So with that being said, it's been Archi Hacks, and I'll see you next time.